good. I'm really excited for this because I think it really does tie into the kind of pop understanding of what's going on in the economy and why people are really struggling to, achieve the kind of prototypical American dream. You get a job, you're able to provide for yourselves. Is this narrative about technology, right? And that we have reached such a, our technology is so advanced now that, that means that wages necessarily have to go down. And one person who, he didn't do super well in the primary, but really invigorated a lot of people, was Andrew Yang, talking about the UBI, universal basic income, as a solution to that, basically evacuating the labor struggle or the fight for fair wages or all these other things, and just saying that we just need to, support people directly because there is no possibility of having a functional, economy that can provide for people anymore because of technology. So I obviously betray some of my feelings about that idea, but I'd like to talk about, technology and unemployment in this last section. And I'll kick to you, Ben, to talk about this because I know we've done a lot on, Yang's and also this kind of idea that technology itself is what is driving unemployment.
Yeah. So
underemployment.
Right. So, as far as the last part of the question, the extent to which technological changes as opposed to other factors are actually driving, is actually driving unemployment, and the extent to which that'll be long term, I will defer to the actual economists here. But I think there are some big picture things that are worth saying about this. That one has to do with the limits of that kind of like Yang program, which I think you're right, some people were really responding to because he seemed to be taking the problem seriously. That you have all this unemployment and you need some sort of direct government assistance to do something about it. That alone struck people as it goes back to what Richard Wolff was saying about West Virginia, recognition, just that recognition meant something. And I think it also goes to the point about that sort of learned skepticism about what government's actually going to do, that, a lot of more radical structural changes, unfortunately, sound very unrealistic to lots of people right now. Okay, could you get a check? All right, you could imagine that, right? You can imagine getting a check. Mm-hmm. But I think that once you actually start to think about, what that would look like, it's just grotesquely inadequate, especially if it's the a la carte UBI, which I think realistically, if it happened, unfortunately, I think is what we get, rather than a UBI that some leftists have advocated as part of a suite of programs that would address various other needs in various other ways. But if you just got it, it would actually likely be used as an excuse to cut other kinds of government assistance. Look, we're already giving people a check. Why do we also need to provide them with X, Y, or Z? Mm-hmm. Two, it would immediately be eaten up, right? Look, if if you're a landlord and you know that all of your tenants are getting an extra $1,000 in the mail now, then why wouldn't you just raise the rent? What's going to stop you from doing that? Now, there are things that we could do to stop people from doing that, but at that point, you're talking about a much more ambitious program than just cutting people a check. And just on a really big picture point, I think that whether it's true or not, and certainly I think there are, again, I'm sure Richard and Mark will speak more to this part. I do believe there are reasons to be skeptical about this, if nothing else, from the fact that we've heard it so many times before. You can find lots of stuff in the 80s, the 70s, people saying the robots are coming for all the jobs. Now, maybe there'll come a point when it's true, right? Just because something hasn't come true a number of times in the past doesn't necessarily mean that it never will. But I think that maybe the last point I make about this would just be that, look, let's say for the sake of argument that this time it will. That this time it really is true that developing technology will lead to long-term mass unemployment in a way that it hasn't before. Well, if that's true, just sending people Yang bucks every month is a grotesquely inadequate solution to that problem, and one that could really start looking like bread rations in the late Roman Republic. When you had all these people who used to be small farmers, who had been bought up by big landed estates, ended up as paupers in Rome, and so you start instituting the daily bread ration so they have enough to eat that they don't starve to death, or riot. And undermine, the power structure in Rome. That's really what that's the sort of grim cyberpunk dystopia, vision that the Yang UBI program really sounds like to me. And look, if it is true, right? If it were, for the sake of argument, true that we really are going to get the long-term mass technological unemployment this time, that actually gives us much more of a reason. Just go full commie on this. That gives us much more of a reason to care who controls the means of production, because if it is a small class of capitalists who own the machines and the machines are doing all of the work, then that's very bad news for the rest of us. Our best case scenario is some equivalent to that Roman bread ration. If, on the other hand, the machines are collectively owned, democratically owned, then if the machines are doing most of the work, that's fantastic, because we can just spread around what remaining work still needs to be done by humans, so nobody has to work very much, and everybody can have the same standard of living. So sometimes people present this as if, this sort of like old-fashioned 19th century socialist question about ownership of the means of production is irrelevant because of these technological changes, or supposedly this coming mass technological unemployment. I'd say that if the prediction was actually true this time, that would actually make those questions much more urgent.
If I could comment, I would like to play the economist card here for a moment. I think
that'll save me doing it.
Yeah, no. We'll make a duet out of it. I think we need to separate the question of employment from the question of technology. The attempt to link those as if they have a necessary one-to-one correspondence is a terrible collapse in the face of neoclassical economics and things like that we shouldn't and do not need to do. Let me illustrate it with a simple arithmetic. Suppose we're producing something and we spend $100 on workers and $100 on materials, and we produce some shit and we sell it for whatever, $300. Okay, and now a machine comes along that is twice as productive as before. So as we use up the existing machines and we replace them with the new ones, everybody is twice as productive as they were before. So what now happens, we know with capitalism, what is going to happen is that there go Mark Spikes. With capitalism, the employer has a clear incentive. He's going to fire half the workers, right, because the other half are now twice as productive. Let's keep this example simple. They will now produce the total output before, but with half the labor force. He will sell it as before, earn the same revenue, assume a constant price. There's no reason here not to. And basically, he gains in profit the one half of his payroll that he doesn't have to pay to those workers anymore. So it's great for him. He fires the workers. Everything else is the same. And by the way, this is a wonderful incentive for technical progress that the capitalist gains from, right? But now let's look at an alternative scenario. He says to the workers, or the workers say to him, okay, we're now twice as productive as before. We want everything to stay exactly as it was. You pay us what you paid us before. You buy the new machines, just like you did before, same cost, because it's the same price of the machine, it's just twice as effective. You'll produce the same amount, you'll sell it, everything will be the same. But we will all work 4 hours a day, not 8. The profit is the same. The revenue is the same. The benefit of the technology has accrued as leisure to the workers rather than profit to the capitalist. Hello? That's what we're interested in. We We're not Luddites. We want the technical change because we could benefit. But what blocks us is capitalism and the way it works, which puts the decision of how to utilize the technology in the hands of a person who's going to do it in manner A and impose that on the workers rather than having the majority decide to use the technology for the benefit of the majority in the form of a transformation of their life, half the hours of labor, same wage as before.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done the work. I can assure you the arithmetic is foolproof. There's no problem. But it's a wonderful illustration that you could have massive technological change that would make the life of the mass of people better if it was used in a particular way and was not held hostage to the profit criterion, which is now why it's a terrible fear that AI or robotics will destroy our jobs rather than make our lives better. That's a very old socialist argument, but it holds water brilliantly.
I totally agree. I'll take it in a slightly different direction. I want to put the issue of UBI to one side. I think it's a very complex issue. And just look at the technology unemployment one. Plug for a book. If you want to make that case, this is the smartest case, right? This is the one. That's a really good thing. And the basic story here is it's not technology, and it's dead easy to understand why, because if technology was doing this, technology measured as productivity would be going up. It's falling. But what's happening is output, because of global overcapacity, is falling even faster. So it looks like productivity is increasing, and that's causing unemployment. It's actually not. It's the fact that you have so much overcapacity globally in manufacturing, and everybody's been shedding it since the 1970s, that basically the game is over in terms of that being a growth engine, and we don't have a new one to pick it up. So if you want to link it, that's the way to link it. I'm almost convinced by that, but I've always had a problem with overcapacity arguments in the sense that they're intensely structural. They take things that's really a flow as a kind of a stock. And here's what I mean by that. If the problem is you've got too much capacity, increase demand. Right? Technically, there's no reason you can't do that. So you can imagine a world in which, and this was very much the key to the kind of the Fordist post-war economic model, if you basically increase your capital stock with a constant share of labor productivity, as those workers get more productive, if they're able to claim their share of productivity, you're going to increase consumption. That increase in consumption means more final demand, which basically absorbs the extra production, right? So in principle, there is a solution to this. The second thing is, it's a bit of a lump of labor, right? There's only a certain amount of work to be done. And once we've done it, there's no work left. Now, when you immediately think like, that's nonsense, right? Now, look, we were talking earlier about, decarbonization, Green New Deal, whatever you want to call it, right? Just think about the following. 30% of US carbon emissions come from the fact that we build the shittiest buildings in the OECD, right? Your windows are not quite as bad as the English, which are painted shut, single pane, but they're getting there, right? Drywall, 2x4s, the whole lot, terrible insulation, whole lot. So you're going to have to refit every building in a country of 330 million people to get that down. That's a 30-year project involving work and lots of it. So the notion that there's no work and it's all going to be done by robots, right? It's just garbage. My final example of this, right, is around 2010 when all this started with the whole sort of race against the machine and all these books coming out and the Oxford report, we're all going to be replaced, right? It's happening right in the middle of a financial crisis with mass unemployment. I mean, talk about taking the finger to people. I mean, the Financial Times was brilliant to read at that point because it was almost like, all you people that just blew up the world, here's a great investment opportunity for you now. You've been bailed out. Let's really go screw everyone, right? And that's what it sounded like. But the thing was, it was just people hawking bits of the sky to each other. Today, Uber sold its self-driving car division at a loss because it doesn't work. I could have told them that 10 years ago. It's ridiculous, right? The other one was so many people in the United States bought this argument about technology, particularly in trucking, was going to do in trucking, that by 2014, I think it was, the whole industry was short 120,000 drivers. And wages were rising faster in trucking than anywhere because you couldn't get people who had the licenses because nobody invested in them because they were all going to be replaced by robots. Self-fulfilling horseshit. right? So, I'm deeply skeptical of the technology stuff. If there is a link, it's that. And I think that one is not as hard and fast as is often made out.
Yeah, maybe when we refit all the buildings, for the green technology, we can also put back in light switches.
Yes, definitely. That's a big fan.
Really, it becomes crazy. Mark is absolutely right. We are a disaster as a society in terms of providing a decent retirement for people who have done their life's work.
Right.
There is a vast set of programs that need staffing, that can't be done by robots, to help provide a reasonable life for a fast-growing segment of our population, the older folk. We don't have anything like the quality daycare that masses of young people with children need. I mean, there is no end to what we could do. There is no unemployment problem, except that our rule is nobody gets a job unless it's profitable for someone else to do that. Yeah. It's crazy, an arrangement like that. It always was crazy. And that's part of the old socialism that we have to rediscover, rewrite it a little bit for the modern idiom. But it's right there, and much of that work has been done.
Well, I think, so we don't go too long, I think that might actually be a perfect place to settle things up. I wish we could, continue talking for a bunch longer.
Well, luckily you have a show and you can have us all back on.
I would love to do that sometime soon. I know we didn't even get into, honestly, like Prop 22 and the fact that, that's what Uber's worried about, by the way. The self-driving cars are one thing, but being able to redefine labor laws, there's a reason that they're very fixated on that. So maybe that's a teaser for another conversation down the line. But thank you so much, Mark, Richard, and Ben, for being here for this great conversation, and also, spending a little bit of time remembering our good friend Michael Brooks.
Thanks, David.
It's a pleasure. He was a great fellow. He brought us together. He spoke to a generation of people that needed and wanted what he was producing. And when he started, it wasn't available. And he's a major provider of that. And we will all be, in complex ways, in his debt for years to come.
Question.
Said. Well, thank you all.
Thank you.